Are there truly any realistic UFA signings for the Flames, or should they be avoiding them all like the plague?
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jessica Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. I thought today would be a fun day to kind of run through a list of UFAs that the Flames could sign, or a little bit deeper than just like the big names on the list. And, if there's any that would potentially make sense or you could understand if they signed, should they go that route. But first, make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And let's just kick it off with the big names, okay? We've talked about Sam Bennett a number of times on this podcast. We're going to talk about him later. We're going to talk about Mitch Marner. But let's start with Aaron Ekblad. Aaron Ekblad is obviously currently playing for the Florida Panthers, and he is a right-handed defenseman. And the Flames do not need another right-handed defenseman. They are currently trying to trade essentially the same player in Rasmus Andersson, and it just does not make sense to sign a 29-year-old to a long-term deal north of $8.5 million or at all. I also just really don't like the idea of bringing someone who has been found guilty of using performance-enhancing drugs into this locker room. I just don't think, obviously we don't know the exact substance, but I just don't think that that's necessarily something that this culture needs. But that is a whole nother can of worms. But I digress. No, I think that the Flames really, and this goes for all of the players we're going to talk about today. If they're bringing players in, they need to be moving on and moving out some other players. That's the only way that most of these free agent signings make any sense. And unfortunately, you have a logjam regardless. And there's a lot of movement that needs to happen internally before you can start fixing out, building out from there. But let's talk about Brad Marchand. It sounds like he's just going to go to the highest bidder, which I get. I mean, I think it is very likely that he wins another Stanley Cup, potentially the Conn Smythe. So at that point, it's just kind of like going out to pasture, enjoying his final days or seasons as an NHLer, and then retiring. I think it's very clear that he still has a lot of gas left in his tank. His days of playing top line minutes are gone. That is very obvious. And I think that's a huge part of why he is finding the success in Florida. Obviously, he's still playing a big role. That's without question. But his minutes are very different. His responsibilities are different. And even if they weren't, I'm not sure that he would be struggling. I think for the Flames, when I look at this and try to figure out, okay, where could he fit? Let's say you put him on the third line. I think him and Backlund could be fun together, and assuming Blake Coleman was on that line as well, I think that would be a lot of fun. But I do feel like it just, again, does not make sense to bring in another 36-year-old on a 3-year deal. You have enough older players tied up right now and under contract. I would love it, in a sense of just doing it for the sake of doing it. But I do think that if the Flames want to take steps in their rebuild, then they need to be a little more intentional with their moves. And I don't necessarily think signing Brad Marchand, it is in those cards, unfortunately. Again, another player we're going to talk about real quick here is Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner is just another situation that the Flames don't need to be in. Yes, it sounds fantastic to bring in a 100-plus point player. Jonathan Huberdeau. That is exactly what this reminds me of. And I'm not saying Mitch Marner is going to have like that big of a drop off, but I'm just getting flashbacks to thinking how great it was when, okay, Gaudreau's out and then you trade Kachuk, but hey, you're bringing in a guy that just scored 115 points too. So like you're making up some of that offense immediately. I don't think that the Flames should put on blinders and just be looking for offense. They also need to be thinking about their long-term plan. They do not need to tie up $14 million in a player for the next 7 years. If they were to sign Mitch Marner for $14 million, let's say just for 4-year deal, apparently that's floating around, that is still half the cap space that they have available this summer. And I don't necessarily think that that's the move. And I don't think that he necessarily fits this plan, this current path that the Flames are on. They need to continue their, like, again, clearing their own rosters and building space. And they're not looking, they don't have many complementary pieces to the players that they already have. And I don't know if Mitch Marner would be one of those players. And I don't necessarily think that he wants to sign in Canada to begin with. I think if he leaves Toronto, he's leaving Canada for good. I mean, he is leaving Toronto. That's been made clear. But there's no reason for him to stay in Canada. And I think there's a lot more incentive for him to sign with a team like Vegas. So that is what it is. With these three guys, it's a situation where the Flames don't fit what the Flames are doing. The Flames are, again, trying to get younger and get, build a competitive team. But at the end of the day, we know that this team is trying to add pieces and be competitive as fast as possible. They're trying to speed up this process because they saw last year and they saw what they could accomplish. And now they're going to try to run it back. And I think that there may be some complementary pieces that they could add. Maybe consider adding if this is the route they're taking. But coming up next, we're going to talk about those two players and just how, maybe age doesn't necessarily matter when it comes to someone like Matt Duchene. Have you ever looked at your bank account and wondered where on earth did all of my money go? Yes, me too. It is a frequent occurrence in this household. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. And when you start using Monarch Money, you can realize, you can kind of pinpoint where that extra money's going. Are you ordering out a lot at lunch, at work? Are you getting yourself little extra gas station treats? You can budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcast, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your Calgary Flames every day. Let's talk about Matt Duchene for a second. This is a player that just broke franchise records in Nashville and then got bought out and signed with Dallas and has hit is hitting the UFA market this summer. He is going to be 30. He'll be 35 in January. So, he's still I think that this is what we're seeing more of. Like, players playing until they're like 38, 39 and still being, not immediately dropping off a cliff. I think that players are taking better care of themselves. The training is, gotten more intense and specified per player. But when I saw this, I said to myself, now why on earth would the Flames consider Matt Duchene? They already have enough lefties. They do not need another left shot in the lineup. But then he had 82 points in 82 games, including 30 goals with the Dallas Stars this season. And the season before that, he had 25 goals and then 22 and 43 before that. But let's just talk about the last 2 or 3 seasons. He is still producing at a wild rate. And when you think about it, Nashville wasn't necessarily like overrun with talent. I mean, there's definitely talented players, don't get me wrong, but I'm not completely writing off the fact that the Flames may be able to get a 20-goal season out of Matt Duchene. I think that that's a possibility. And the Flames need to score. We know this. They were third last in goal differential last season. They just could not buy a goal some games, and it was kind of embarrassing. And if you need someone to, find the back of the net more consistently and just kind of, do something for you, I think Matt Duchene may be that guy. And saying that in 2025 feels bananas. Obviously he's come a very long way since his time in Colorado and Ottawa, for sure. I think he's grown in, more. The 16 years in the NHL have done him good. And I think for him to really come into any organization, I think that the Stars will be moving on from him, obviously, with their cap space issue. But with the Flames, knowing how they do like their veteran players and are likely going to be moving on from Kevin Rooney and, maybe sliding Backlund down further in the lineup, maybe you bring in Matt Duchene. Even though you have a plethora of centers, by the way, this could be a world where the Flames do that. I don't know if they do this, but to me, it doesn't make sense. But I could understand why the Flames would do it, should that be the route they take. I mean, it's not ideal. I think that they really need to continue to work through the players that they have and figure out their in-house talent before bringing in someone to just kind of patch up a little bit of offense. And I don't think that they are at a point in their rebuild where they need to be looking to add 30 goal scorers. I think they need to work on themselves before they start branching out a little bit more. And it's obvious. I mean, I think, actually Matt Duchene, he shoots left. So sure. Why not? Do it again. He is 35 years old and still has gas left in the tank, very similar to Marchand. And I think that if they did sign him, I would say a 1 or 2 year deal would make sense. I don't particularly like it for the route that I have in my mind, but I could understand. And another player that has been on everyone's radar is Nikolai Ehlers. Another left-hand shot, but he had 24 goals, 63 points in 69 games. The Flames need the offense. Similar to Matt Duchene, you know that you're getting someone that can score goals. And ultimately, that's what the Flames are looking for. They're looking to win games. They're not concerned with bottoming out, tearing things down to the studs. They want to win games, and they want to move this thing along as quickly as possible. And bringing in Matt Duchene or Nikolai Ehlers could do that. But my biggest concern is that he is 29 years old. And the season hasn't even started. And you're going to sign you have Jonathan Huberdeau signed through till the 5th ice age. Are you sure you need another 29-year-old on this team when you're actively trying to trade Rasmus Anderson? If you're going to sign a player long term and throw money at them, I kind of think Nikolai Ehlers is the player to do it with. You need someone that's going to score goals. You need someone that has playoff experience within the last 5 years. And you need someone that, again, knows how to shoot the puck and score. However, once again, we are stuck in the conundrum of the Flames already have too many forwards. So who are you moving on from? Even if all of your UFAs walk. So let's say Kevin Rooney, Justin Kirkland, Anthony Mantha, Dan Vladar. There are still players that have to find homes in your lineup before you bring in other players. And it's just, I don't know. It's another thing I could understand if they did it. I wouldn't necessarily be a fan of it, considering where they are at. But I guess it would potentially move things along if other pieces are, done right. And at the end of the day, like I mentioned before, players aren't retiring or aren't seeing that sharp decline at 30, 33, 34 years old anymore. Yeah, you're obviously not going to get 25-year-old game out of them, but if they're still putting up 20 plus goals a season, I think it's worth the investment. I think the Flames really need to focus. They need to focus on what the heck they're going to do with all of their forwards before they even think about the playoffs or really even the regular season outside of roster construction. That's what they need to focus on. And hopefully their new assistant general manager will, bring that to the forefront as well. But coming up next, we're going to wrap up the show with some players I think the Flames really don't need to put any investment or attention to. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you are following me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Just Belmosto. Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews do not need to be anywhere in the vicinity of the Saddle Dome unless they are opponents. I just don't think the Flames need to sign either of them. Jonathan Toews is coming back after 3 seasons of battling an autoimmune disease, and no one really knows what he's capable of. I don't think this is a reclamation project for the Flames, and I don't think he would want to sign with the Flames. But point being, you can't just be signing old players to take up roster spots. You have enough players that are moving along in your pipeline that if you want these players to become NHL regulars, you need to let them have NHL regular time, even if that means taking a step back competitively for a year or two. I think it's the same philosophy when it comes to Patrick Kane. I don't care what they did 10 years ago. If they brought championships to Chicago, that's good for them. You know what? Nice. There's a lot of things that I have issues with. And I don't want the sense of nostalgia just taking over the Flames locker room, because that is what is driving the front office, it feels like. Because, win and get in and anything can happen like 2004, but that's not how it works in today's NHL. We are 21 years removed from that, and the teams have only gotten better. Players have only gotten faster. Goaltending has been crazy. Oh, even over the last 5-6 seasons, the goaltenders we have seen emerge, just unbelievable. And to me, if you want to take these next steps in your rebuild, whatever we're calling this, you have to take anyone. You have to reconsider what you're doing with your roster. Michael Backlund doesn't need to be playing 15 minutes a night, 12 minutes a night. Put him on the fourth line. Let Morgan Frost on the penalty kill. Put him on there. Okay, what are we doing with Martin Pospisil and Igor Sharangovich? Can we figure out a new home for either of them? There are just too many forwards that need to be moved one way or another, and they need to trade them now. And I think they're not going to do it. I've heard from multiple people that it's going to be a quiet off season from the Flames, and that's good in a sense, but there's so much work to be done that could be done that a quiet offense just feels like a quiet way of saying, oh yeah, let's just run it back. They should not be looking to run it back. And I don't think that they should be looking to add most of the players I've mentioned today. And another one of those guys is Trent Frederick. He is currently playing with the Oilers. He was traded from Boston. Was hurt when he was traded, so he kind of had a delayed start there, but it's another left shot. The Flames don't need any more depth players. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but I'm about to get a whiteboard and draw a visualization of the Flames depth charts, and I hope that puts it further into perspective for people on why some of these players need to be traded, why they shouldn't be re-signed, why, I mean, you kind of hope someone asks for a trade at this point in the forward group. You know, there are just far too many bodies and not enough spots. I think, like, even Adam Klapka coming back on that top line, I think is a ridiculous move. You have so many middle six forwards. You cannot expect all of them to play up. Put Connor Zary back on the wing. Try him at center. Put Joel Farabee. Do something. Because it is unrealistic to keep asking these players to play up. But you can't be bringing in players like Matt Duchene if you don't move anyone. That's like, there has to be a counter move, and the Flames just aren't interested for whatever reason in freeing up. It doesn't even matter about cap space, freeing up roster spots, or maybe it's not even like they have far too many 13th and 14th forwards. They have enough depth defensemen to ice a whole nother decor. And I've had enough of it. They need to weed out these players. They need to thin out the group. And I think the only way they're going to do that is, again, by trading players. You don't have enough UFAs walking to make a real difference. So, essentially, I don't want to see them sign any forwards in free agency unless they are moving players. I think if you trade Blake Coleman, you bring in a guy like Nikolai Ehlers, Matt Duchene, you could try. Why not just throw your name in the ring for Brad Marchand? Like, honestly, what's the harm? Well, like, if they're gonna do anything, which they are, they just need to be smart about it. And I don't know what the Flames have in mind, because it feels like we're getting so many mixed messages across the board. But that will do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. I hope you all have a fantastic start to your week and are enjoying your summer. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your Calgary Flames every day. And I will see you all tomorrow.